I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and welcome back to Genesis Does, where today we're looking at an intriguing game called Oh Mummy. It's an Amstrad CPC game that was ported to Sega Genesis much later. It was made by Omsoft in 1984 and often included free with the computer. The gameplay has been described as being similar to Amadar, but I haven't played Amadar in so long that I really can't say if that's accurate or not. What I can say is it's a standard maze traversal game like Make Tracks or Pac-Man. You know the type where you have to clear all of the lines in the maze, either picking up or putting down tracks wherever you go. In this case, your footprints are the tracks, as you are an archaeologist who is exploring an ancient pyramid, but there are mummies haunting the pyramid trying to prevent you from getting the treasure. And how do you get the treasure? You cover every single space in the maze. When you circle all the way around a tomb with your footprints, it reveals what is inside the tomb. So it's a very simple game. You don't need to know any button combos. In fact, the A, B, and C and start really don't do anything. You just hit start to start the game, you hit start to play, you hit start to restart. You don't really need the buttons for anything other than that. You're using the D-pad the entire time to encircle these tombs while avoiding the mummies. And to keep it spicy, they change things up. The layout of the tombs stays the same from level to level, but one level is water-based, so you can't see your footprints to know if you've encircled the tombs or not. One is in the dark, so you're not able to see anything, the tombs or yourself. And one has a tornado that comes through and wipes away your footprints. Apparently they're in the dust in the tombs, so when it blows the dust around, your footprints get covered up. There are also penalties in the game that will impede your progress. For example, one of the treasures that's hidden inside one of these tombs actually screws up your D-pad and makes every directional input you pick the opposite of the one you selected. You hit left, you go right, you hit down, you go up, and so forth. It wears off after a little while, so I guess it's like the Pharaoh's curse. You've been cursed, and you eventually recover from that curse. Also, if a mummy makes line of sight with you and vice versa, you kind of freeze in your tracks and shiver for a little bit in terror. And if they're really close to you when that happens, they'll get you and you'll lose a life. But if you're not, you can recover and get away from the mummy. So there is that as well. It's a simple game, but I think it's a fun game. I can see why they would have included it bundled in with Amstrad CPC computers, because it's the kind of thing that would instantly be addictive to somebody that had just a keyboard and a space bar to hit to start the game or return or whatever function key would do that. You could play it with just arrow keys and one key to start the game. And that's really what you're doing with the Genesis here as well. You're just using the D-pad and one key to start the game. I imagine this could be ported to just about anything in existence. I can't imagine there would be much complication even on something with relatively low power. It's like Tetris in that respect. If you get the basics of this game down, you could probably put it on any computer with a graphical display output, either built-in or external, that could render the graphics of the game. I imagine somebody like the 8-bit guy could even program it for a Commodore PET computer that had no sprites whatsoever. You could use all text and create the maze and the mummies that are tracking you down, and the graphics that would show when you encircle a tomb to indicate that you've cleared that part of the maze. It seems endlessly portable to me. Now, for whatever reason, the Wikipedia entry doesn't mention that there's a Sega Genesis port of Oh Mummy, but it clearly exists because I'm playing it. So we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. Let's see what Oh Mummy Genesis turns up. Aha! The reason Wikipedia doesn't have an entry for it is it's an unlicensed game. It was released by 1985 Alternativo, which we saw in the credits at the beginning, in October 2012, and it serves as an unofficial update to the original Oh Mummy from 1984. It was released in freeware in 2013 when stocks of the boxed cartridge of the game ran out. So I guess they actually made a physical version of it for at least a little bit. Yes, according to Retro Megabit, it was indeed sold physically in 2012 for $50 Canadian, but the print run apparently ran out pretty quickly and it was on a site in Spain to boot, so I'm sure some people were completely caught off guard by that and didn't even know to go to a Spanish website to find it, and he says he didn't know to get it there either, so he bought it in an eBay auction for $70. 70 Canadian. Whatever that would have been in 2013 dollars. I don't know. I think like 1.2 Canadian dollars to $1 US is about the usual rate. Sometimes as high as $1.30, sometimes a lot lower, depending on economic global conditions and the political climate and a bunch of other things you don't care about. Anyway, Oh Mummy also has boss stages, as you can see from this giant winged feral cat that's chasing me all around the screen. And I guess if you collect all the treasures, you can kind of launch a counterattack against the pharaoh, but it appears you need to do this multiple times in order to get the boss off your back, and it's hard to collect all the items when it is constantly hovering over them every time you try to move. But to make a long story short, Oh Mummy, since it's now readily available as freeware, is a game you should probably check out, at least in emulation, if not perhaps a physical copy, although Retro Megabit does note that you wouldn't necessarily want to spend $70 Canadian on it, given that the gameplay is somewhat simplistic compared to other games that would fetch that kind of price, but he does note that it is fun to play, so since it's freeware, go ahead and play it. In fact, do it in emulation right now, or put it on an SD card and put it on a compatible device like an EverDrive or your Analog Mega SG or whatever you've got. It looks like you should be able to play this one to your heart's content. It's simple, but it's fun. And sometimes that's all video games need to be. The graphics are well done, the sound is acceptable, the background music is a simple loop, but it gets the job done. It definitely invokes that Egyptian theme. I like this one. Oh Mummy for Sega Genesis. Thanks for watching. I am Mr. MegaManFan, and if you like Genesis Does or anything else that's on this channel, please consider subscribing, like this video, and leave a comment. The engagement always helps. I appreciate your support. Even if you do none of those things, I appreciate you being here to watch this video about Xeno Crisis. Now, Xeno Crisis started its life as a Kickstarter campaign from Bitmap Bureau in 2018. It was successfully funded, and a physical Mega Drive Sega Genesis game was released in 2019, although since that time, it has been ported to many other platforms, including, but not limited to, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. So even if you don't own a Sega Genesis or an Analog Mega SG or any clone-compatible console, you can still download and play this game on your modern generation console of choice. So keep that in mind as you're watching this gameplay footage. Releasing it as a Mega Drive game, though, reflects the spirit of the game, and that is a run-and-gun 1990s Smash TV style video game. If you've never played Smash TV, let me give you a very brief outline of the style of that game and this game as well. You're in a room with exits north, south, east, west, sometimes multiple exits, sometimes just one, but you cannot leave the room until you clear all of the enemies in it. And the enemies spawn at predetermined points, which you won't know until you enter the room, and then they start mercilessly coming towards you. And you have to sweep the entire room with whatever weapon you have. Machine gun, homing bullets, flamethrower, whatever you got, it doesn't matter. You gotta clear all the enemies, and some of them will drop special items, like the aforementioned different weapons, flamethrowers and the like, or power-ups, or extra lives. You never know what it's gonna be. In Smash TV, this was presented in the format of a game show, so the enemies on the screen that you killed left prizes like money, television sets, trips to Hawaii, things like that. But in this game, you're collecting dog tags, weapons, and other such combat-related items. The dog tags can be used to power up your abilities when you complete a level, and the other items like the machine guns and the ammunition, those are needed for the combat. And your ammunition is limited. I'm glad I mentioned that, because if you fire recklessly without taking out enemies and just spray your bullets everywhere, you're going to run out of ammunition, and then the enemies are going to march on you and you're screwed. But they do drop ammo boxes periodically. So even if you don't get one from killing an enemy, you can pick up an ammo box to reload, but you have to get to the ammo box without the enemies getting to you first. So you want to take out everything on the screen, but you also want to be a little judicious about how you do it, because if you waste your bullets, you're in trouble. You may have picked up on the fact by now that Xenocrisis is a twin-stick shooter, one to move and one to fire your weapon, and you're thinking, how is that possible with a standard Sega Genesis controller? It's not like you have dual analog sticks on that thing. Well, the D-pad is one quote-unquote stick, and your other is the buttons of a Sega Genesis 6-button controller. Maybe this works with a 3-button controller. I haven't tried, I don't know, but I used a 6-button to play this because what ends up happening is the 4 buttons furthest to the left are up, down, left, and right. Maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't. I'm explaining it the best way I can, but it feels natural when you're playing the game. You just let your thumb on your right hand travel over the 4 leftmost of the 6 action buttons, and you hit the up one to fire up and the down one to fire down, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't seem like a twin stick shooter would work on Sega Genesis, but believe it or not, it actually does. Maybe this is more playable on something like a Switch or a PS4 where the analog sticks serve those purposes and you're not fudging it with a Genesis controller, but I think it's ridiculously fun this way, so I can't say that it's wrong. I can just say that it's working within the limitations of the hardware as we know it. Speaking of limitations, you do have a limited number of continues, but those continues come with a catch. They're actually called elixirs, and I don't want to give away too much of the plot of this game, but suffice it to say, if you want the good ending, if you clear the whole game without using any elixirs, that would be how you get the good ending, and I won't say any more about it than that. Should you buy Xenocrisis? Well, that depends on if you're a fan of games like Robotron, Smash TV, Total Carnage. Then absolutely yes, this game would be right up your alley. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it rides on that wheel very comfortably in a gameplay style that's familiar and fun if you know those other games. And even if you don't know those games, you might find you enjoy the frantic action, the adrenaline rush of clearing a room, the thrill of beating a boss at the end of a level, and there's even some procedurally generated elements to the game, like the Binding of Isaac, for example, where the layout of the map changes each time you play. Now, you can't select a map, But what I'm telling you is that if you think you've played the game and you've beaten it and you know it all, then play it again, because it's going to be a different orientation than it was previously. New entrance and exit points, new enemy hordes to defeat, and even new bonus items to find. Like in this playthrough, I found a couple of humans that were hiding out from the alien hordes, and I assume their names came from Kickstarter backers of the game. And wherein how those bonus humans to rescue pop up in the map has to be part of that procedural generation. I imagine that it just selects them from a predetermined list of names and then adds them to the game when the call routine for it is activated, for lack of a better word. Here they are, Andy and Golden PP72. So congratulations to those Kickstarter backers. You got featured in this video and in the game as a whole. Xenocrisis, well, let me just say I think it rocks. I would even go so far as to say I would buy it again on Switch or PS4 just to play it with genuine dual analog stick controllers and get that real twin stick feel. But this is perfectly fine on Sega Genesis. There's nothing wrong with playing it this way either. Slightly more cumbersome, but not something that you can't adapt to if you've played any number of run and gun shooter games, and maybe even if you haven't. I feel like the difficulty level is pretty spot on for this. You can select easy or hard, and easy is gonna allow you to get adapted to it, and hard is going to expect you to know the challenge that you're in for and deal with it accordingly. So pick the level you want, enjoy yourself. Xenocrisis is a good time. I am Mr. MegaManFan, and this is Genesis Does. I thank you for watching, and as I said at the beginning, if you like the content, please subscribe, leave a comment. A thumbs up is always appreciated, and I'll see you again in another video. New content drops every day, and a new episode of Genesis Does drops every Thursday. But bye for now.